I'm reviewing Berserk. Now, why did I pick this book? It had cool swords, and who doesn't like cool swords? And big swords too. Now, also, I started reading this because a lot of talk was about and how amazing it was and how deep of a message it really brings out. I thought this was relevant because in my class we were talking about the hero's journey. The main character in this hero's journey thing is not really following it and twists a lot of it, but whatever. Now, before I get into this, before I even recommend to read this, there's some heavy trigger warnings. It goes through a lot of hard stuff and a lot of dark scenes. Things that can include sexualization and horrific scenes of gore. But this is mostly for the character development and plot. They don't just throw it out there. But anyways, it walks us through these hardships and darkest moments of characters that we learn to love. As we go through these stories with our favorite characters, we see the worst of it. Although this story portrays demons and monsters that can give you nightmares at night and kill literally thousands of people in this novel, the real monster that really sticks throughout this story is the trauma of your past and the pain of just human experience in this dark world. No other story can show off trauma like this and how it can affect people. But the most beautiful part about this is human perseverance. I'll get into that later. Now, the story takes place in a dark fantasy, in a medieval world, as real as it can get, while still having some fantasy elements like funny little elves and really weird looking people and its demons. All these kingdoms ruled by one singular monarch at the top, a tyrant at the top, and all those below them, a humbled slave. Now we follow our main character that sometimes I even question if it even is our hero. His name is Guts. Yes, Guts. Guts. I have never seen a character hurt and suffer more than this one. Only ones that can come close are his closest supporting characters. As we go through this manga, we go through a roller coaster of just trauma and character development. Lots of dark scenes. Now, at the start of this story, we see Guts as a bit of a brute. A cold, unfeeling murderer, someone who's a little bit of a douche, but we read on. It's like he seems like just a murder machine with unstoppable power, and a guy with a lot of plot armor because he just does not want to die. But the author slowly peels back the facade of this strong man with a giant sword. We go through the story and we see the layers of who this Guts guy really is and why he acts like a meathead and a brute who wields a literal fridge by this point. Instead, we figure out how much of a broken person he really is. Broken by everything around him and hardened by the world he was thrown into, while still wielding his giant sword. Like he loves his giant swords, but I digress. We see that behind his cold demeanor and how much he speaks like those who cannot defend themselves are weak and he will never help them, he still hesitates and he still is motivated to aid those people. when he was going to swing his sword, when he sees a young girl nearby, a frail young girl who looks helpless, he still, despite his cold demeanor, despite how violent he is, he still hesitates. He stops his sword. We start to see a glimpse of who he really is behind all that anger and that frustration and the giant sword. Although the reason we find him so cold, when we really see throughout the story, we understand why. This one part of the story really hammers home his reason for being like this. When he's gone through so much and finally has found a place he could call home and some friends and some support and some love, it is all torn away by the one he trusted the most, the one he fought for multitudes of times, just for everything that he thought he loved was ripped away from him, losing all of his friends. And we understand why he never shows his affection anymore, and how he has been hardened by all these traumatic events, not even wanting to let anyone close to him, and getting cold and hating on those who are weak, because that's the lesson that he was taught. To be vulnerable is to be weak. To let those close to him is to be weak. He does not want to be weak. Now, this trauma was given to him by none other by his closest adversary, his closest friend, now our main villain. A villain that I would describe as a benevolent, wretched, and abuser to those who are close to him, befriending all his friends, making them believe in their cause, just to use them as their sacrifice. All just for him to achieve more power. Now, the deeper meaning of the story. This story shows off a symbol of strength, guts. And no, not strength as in, oh, big muscles and I lift heavy things and I'm extremely ripped and I can carry a giant sword. God, I love giant swords. But it also shows off the ability for these characters to take such big losses like guts and lose so much, and yet manage to survive, fight through their life, and even heal and manage to love those who are close to them. The endless struggle against nearly impossible odds show that, and then show at the end that you will not turn into someone cold, is a real symbol of strength. We see this through the eyes and the perspective of Guts.